Can we do a Jaffa cake there? Can we? Give me one of those Jaffa cakes. Lovely stuff altogether. America's only Irish station, Radio Irish, that's what you're listening to. And we're thrilled to be speaking with author, poet and musician Patrick Tobin. How are you, Patrick?
Not too bad, thanks, Sean. How are you?
Grand. Well, you live and work in Nottingham, but you're actually from Tipperary, Patrick. Briefly talk us through your early childhood, up until your parents divorced in 1974. Your father suffered from schizophrenia, I believe.
Yeah, but he did. But because it was like obviously rural Ireland at that time, and 1960s, and they didn't know his behaviour was. He was just considered, a bit of a character. But obviously, he was, he probably started to suffer then until I was born, and then he suffered even more because he kind of like teared off to London. He just let the business go that my grandfather had worked up, which was a steel erecting business. You know, they made cow sheds and things like that. And my grandparents moved to London and left my father with the small business, but he couldn't hack it at all. He just drank heavily, and he just let it go to pieces. And there was four children then, and my mother, home in Carrick, and that was basically when he just upped and left.
Well, it was around the time that your parents divorced, Patrick, when you were 10, that things started to go a little south for you, I understand. What happened next?
I think things went bad for me early on because of my father's behaviour. When we actually got to... When my mother found him, she had to go looking for him. So we left Ireland and we came over to England, and my grandparents and stuff didn't react very well to my mother coming over. So they kind of kicked my mother and us out of the house. My father, unbelievably, my father was allowed to stay in the house in Kilburn, and we had to live in a missionary in Spitalfields, which is the east end of London. I was still very young at the time, obviously, with my three sisters, and they found my father and my mother. They found my father a job in Nottingham as a printer, and a house in a small Irish community here in Nottingham, where I live now, in a kind of rough part of Nottingham called St Anne's, and there was a church there and a school, so we were all set up. But his health just deteriorated and his behaviour became very erratic. But he was a very funny man, extremely funny, typically, but he was a heavy drinker. He wouldn't do, wild horses, wouldn't drag him to do anything he didn't want to do. So obviously the tension grew up between my mother and my father, because he wouldn't work. But my mother was doing three cleaning jobs in the pubs where he was drinking, which was funny. So she'd clean him in the morning, he'd take the money off her and then go drinking him in at night. My schooling, I was sent to psychiatric units as a young boy, because of my father's behaviour. It was really, he was like a psychotic entertainer at times, really. He was quite a bizarre character, but he could have you in fits of laughter 1 minute, and he'd have all the house in a frenzy, meaning us children, and then he would just completely become unpredictable, and he became violent towards my mother. Things like that, so my behaviour was affected because of the things I was doing at the time. I went mute. I wouldn't talk. I loved him, but I was petrified of him at the same time. And by the age of about 9, I was taken into a psychiatric unit for children, and my father was in the adult adult wards in the same hospital. So that was quite weird. My schooling was limited. I didn't attend secondary school at all, because obviously my behaviour was as I was getting older, was getting quite bad. I was becoming, it was a very working class area, and I just became a bit wild, I suppose. So they kept sending me away. So I got sent away eventually for 3 years to what's, they don't have them anymore now. in England. It was an approved school. It's like in America, I think they're like juvenile detention centres. You know, for bad boys, really. Put it simply. So I was taken there about 200 miles away from my home again. That's probably the fourth time I was taken away, till I was 16, and then I came back to Nottingham. But I say I was probably split personality-wise by the time I was about 5. So in the book I tried to outline how my circumstances. I don't think I was born with these conditions at all. I think my circumstances dictated what would happen to me.
Now, you have a passion for music, and it was in your teens that you wanted to break into the music industry, which you did as a guitarist, working for a band and becoming signed to MCA Records in the late 80s. But you suffered another heavy breakdown whilst recording in London at the MCA studios, I believe. What happened there?
Well, I was determined, if you live in somewhere like St Anne's, and you've got any intelligence at all, the first thing you want to do is try and get out of it. And it's not as easy as just getting a job and leaving, and because it was such a deprived area, I just thought, while I was in Blaisdon Hall, which is the approved school, I just thought I've just got to, I just took to music in a big way. I just taught myself guitar, and when I actually left Blaisdon, I started a band straight away to my mother's disapproval. She wanted me to take up something serious, like a job or something, but I didn't think I stood a chance because of the way I was. So I just invested in music totally, and by the time I was 21, I was in London recording at MCA. We got signed to MCA Music in London, and I was recording, and then I had my first, because prior to the actual recording, I went to see my father, who was living in London, and he was still alive then, and I think that had a major impact on me, because I had no impact on him at all, because I thought he'd be really pleased that I'd done something, and he'd finally want me and things like that, but it had no effect on him whatsoever. We just drank together. And then I broke down whilst recording. I completely lost the plot. I couldn't understand where I was, what I was doing. And I was taken back to Nottingham and hospitalised. In a way, to me, music had failed me. It wasn't good enough. It didn't work. I knew I had problems, severe problems, and I knew I was struggling with life. But always, these adventures I'd go into, these things I tried to do were really to seek my father's approval. It's his love I wanted, really, and his affections. I wanted him to come back, even though he was a crazy man. I wanted him back, always. I wanted him back around as a family and everything, but it just wasn't working. So I was getting more and more confused, and I was struggling with my mental health, and I was drinking as well. So that's what really, when I came back to Nottingham, and that's when I'd already been, I've been in trouble with the police when I was younger and things like that. But that was nothing new to the kind of people where we grew up. We all went to the same boxing clubs, played football together, and then it wasn't a big thing that I was getting into trouble or fighting and things like that. The problem was that I was trying to improve myself, get out of the situation I was in, and I was constantly failing. I was getting the success, but when I was just about to, we were recording for a single at the time, and that's when it all went wrong, basically, for me then. So that career just went, that was it. I've never really touched my guitar since.
You were diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder at the age of 23, and your new book, The Moon's Last Gasp, details the events that led up to your breakdowns. Tell me, what is schizoaffective disorder, as opposed to schizophrenia, which your father suffered from?
Well, this is the whole thing which I tried to, in the book. With psychiatry, that you tend to get, when something comes along, schizoaffective disorder is really, you've got the bipolar side of, you still hear voices and you have hallucinations and things like that, but you have you can get high, which is like in bipolar. It's got a bipolar side to it, if you understand what bipolar is.
Yes, yes.
Normally with me there would be, I would get ideas about things, and I would get, I'd think about something. It'd normally be something creative or a business idea or something, and I'd take off on them, and I would it's an extremely single-minded thing, but really you're running. You're running from what's really, it's a forced relief of what's really bothering you. It's a forced high. But it's like, people do think you're on drugs, but it does, eventually you have to come down, and you end up where, you can be extremely charismatic, and you can convince anybody of anything. The life and soul of the party. You think you can do anything. Fly, basically.
Now, you write in the short biography to your book that your incredible drive for success to attain your father's love and approval took your mind and nearly your life. How did that happen, Pat?
Well, I just knew that it didn't really matter what I did. I could be the most successful person on the planet. Because he had no real affection for me or my mother or my sisters, it didn't matter that whatever I did. Because when I thought when I first signed the music contract at 21, I thought everybody would be over the moon for me. I thought they'd think, well, he's had trouble now, he's going to be successful. But it just didn't seem to matter to anybody, and least of all to me then. I just thought it was worthless. It didn't work, and I wasn't feeling any better. In fact, I got worse. It's like the chase is good to get to the success you want, but as soon as I was there, I'd probably destroy it anyway. Whatever I did would never be enough, because there was no way that I could change the kind of man he was. So basically, that drove me to what people would consider to be madness and insanity, and I tried to figure out what had happened to me when I was younger. My mother had denied everything that had ever happened to me, even though she was there at the time. But I think a lot of it, I think if I didn't have a sense of humour, I wouldn't be here now. Anyway, because looking back on some of the things in the book isn't all about how hard it's been for me. I do see the funny side of some of the things I've done and some of the things that were done to me, and etc. I think my sense of humour saves me sometimes. I think I've had 3 suicide attempts. But that's. I think it was a natural, complete despair that I was failing all the time. I still am driven, but I'm not driven now for success, because my father died in 2003. But for me, it still wasn't closure on what happened, or I still can't make sense of it today. But what the book basically outlines is that when you talk about severe mental health and things like that, and no matter who you are, I mean, you're not born mad or insane. You learn from your circumstances. I mean, insanity or madness is a whole different topic altogether. I mean, one psychiatrist's view on what schizoaffective is. I mean, you might call me a psychopath or I've got a severe personality. It's all about opinions or observations. They're only observing you. And then all they do then is heavily medicate you, slow you up. Heavy antipsychotic medication.
Now, while you were in therapy, Patrick, it became apparent that there must have been an early abuse when you were an infant. And it was this abuse which is at the core of your psychosis and madness. It was the doctors who came to that conclusion, Patrick, was it?
Yeah, well, I was really unfortunate, because when they first told me that I'd been abused, I mean, I don't know. I seem to have known it, but I think I'd been abused by an older boy when I was about 5 or 6 in the area I grew up in. When he was, and then there was about 4 people that I could remember remember. But that wasn't so much devastating to me. I think the early abuse which they think happened to me in infancy, I think that is at the core of my psychosis, yeah. And in the book I try to outline and explain why. I think it's because if a child's been abused at a really early age in infancy, you know, from the age of say 2 and 3 or even earlier than that, I think the invasion of a young infant like that is so inappropriate. I think then you're obviously, because it was so wrong what happened, I think I just completely bubbled off and split off from feelings, everything like that. I mean, I can't remember it at all, but they've all said it. I've had 5 different therapies for her, and they've all said from what comes out in the therapy that probably, you know, more than likely I've been abused when I was very, very young. Because I can remember the other abuse, definitely.
Now, you have great compassion for others who suffer from schizophrenia and related disorders, Patrick. Do you think schizophrenia is misunderstood by people at large?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think the compassion I've got is just for any kind of suffering. It's not just for people with mental health issues. I think I'm so affected by things that I see around me, like, say, you know, obviously when you watch the television you see what's going on in the world, and I think that affects me greatly. I feel the injustices, and especially things that are powerless. You know, obviously I was powerless to stop what was happening to me. So I do have compassion for other people suffering, not necessarily just people with mental health issues. Anything that suffers like that. I think suffering is also a part of life, and you have to accept it. You have to accept that suffering. I mean, it's the only time you know when you're really alive. Put it that way. The only time I really know that I'm alive is when I'm suffering. You know, when I'm really happy, or say if I was high, I mean, you're oblivious to everything. I mean, I don't think madness is oblivion either. I mean, then it'd be easy for all of us if we just all get mad. But you can't. I mean, life's not like that. You have to accept, and you know, I think the problem with schizophrenia is that people see an unbelievable unpredictability in somebody who's got it. They don't know what they're going to do next or something. And that's not necessarily true. That, yeah, of course, but I think that's what they fear. It's the unknown in somebody who could probably just pop up and do something bizarre, or they talk differently, or they act differently. But I understand it. I mean, when people go on about, you know, reducing stigmas and stuff about things like severe mental health, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. I think that's psychiatry's job, and I think on the whole psychiatry is a dinosaur. I think it's way back. I think it's the hospital wards are terrible. They are in this country. I mean, they just cram you in and then let you out and then cram you back in again. There's no structure for people with severe mental health. If you're suffering from something like depression or something, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I think they can deal with that. But if they're dealing with somebody who's psychotic, I think you're just left to it. You're lost. You'll definitely be lost within the system. So I think what I decided early on is that I'm not going to let the system. I fought with the system. I've been driven to fight the system of what the institution is, which is psychiatry itself. But it's still based on Freudian ideas. I mean, they're over 100 years old. They really don't know what severe mental health is. They know how to medicate for it, meaning making you extremely lethargic and slow. I mean, I was on lithium for 25 years. It virtually made me a stone. I had no feelings whatsoever. I mean, to medicate for it, you need some medication. But when you go on a hospital ward, everybody's medicated, no matter what you've got. Everybody shuffles. They don't walk, they shuffle. And you can't tell the staff from the patients these days either. Now, my war now is with psychiatry itself. It's a closed shop. It uses its own semantics. It has its own ways. I mean, obviously, it's not working. It's not working over here. I don't know what the mental health system's like in the US, what the wards are like. I don't know how people adapt in the US to it, but I know that people are suffering with severe mental health. But a hospital ward is not the answer. you don't really get well on them, and else people wouldn't come back in. It's not like removing a cancer.
Now, you began to write The Moon's Last Gasp as a way to purge yourself, in a way, of all that transpired in your past and in your family life. How has it helped you, Patrick?
It's helped me in the way obviously it was cathartic for me to write it. It helped, but in the way it hasn't purged me. It's just that made me ask more questions as to why. Not so much. I mean, I can accept the abuse. I can accept my behaviour. I don't condone anything. I've done some questionable things in my past. I know I have. But what it does is the whole aim of the book is to outline from a very young child into a man how the circumstances I was placed in with my family, with a volatile father, a mother in denial, my siblings, etc., my schooling, how the onset of how bad I really got, gradually, how I've learned to adapt to a world which I don't really feel a part of, because I don't feel part. I don't like to feel part of it, because to me the world and people in it are both repulsive and magnetic to me at the same time, which it's hard to deal with. I mean, if I was to really talk about, what I feel about things and what I feel about what's happening at the moment, I mean, we'll be on it for hours.
Now, the book describes in great detail some of the situations and circumstances which led up to your current diagnosis, and the book is described as an extremely sad yet humorous account. Tell me, Patrick, how important is that humour to you in terms of your efforts to overcome your disability?
Well, it is important, but I mean, when you're struggling at the time, I mean, you don't think, if you're hearing voices or, you're trying to fathom out. After I became, I became sober 7 years ago, and I've not drank since. The thing is, I've got, I'm not obviously not self-medicating now, which normally if I start to hear voices or things like that, I would drink heavily, and I'd still be able to participate in the world to some extent, because people would just see a drunk or a man walking around into pubs and stuff, and heavily drinking and having the crack and so on. So when I became sober, I kind of opted out of all that. I've had to leave all that behind me, which wasn't too hard, really. You never really make friends in the pub anyway. You just make acquaintances and people that you chat along with, and they're just drinking partners. So that's when I decided, when I first became sober, is to write the book, and it was good. But my sense of humour, I mean, really, when you've been through, say, a bit of an episode, and you can look back and you can think of some of the bizarre things you've done, and you have to have a laugh about it. That helps. That's the humanity in it all. I mean, I've been in some bizarre situations in hospital. It's a lot of funny. A lot of funny things happen in hospital. People do behave oddly. It's true. They do. They say and do funny things, and they have weird ways of coping with their health. And some of that, to me, is funny. I think some of the psychiatrists are even funny. I had one who fainted on me once in an interview. He just keeled over and fainted, which was funny. I found it hysterical, but obviously everybody else didn't, because when you've got a psychiatric patient running out crying for a nurse because she's like, they immediately think that I probably lamped him or something and knocked him out, but I didn't. He fainted. That was funny. I was in an interview once and they had the wrong notes, and they were interviewing me with somebody else's notes, so I just went along with it. And that was funny. I think that's funny, eventually. But they didn't. There are some... The book, of course, it has a good... my upbringing was very Irish, traditionally Irish. We went to Mass and things like that and everything. And funny things happened. I mean, I have to look back on that. If I look back, I immediately think of funny things. Even though some things were really horrific and tragic, I think that's what saved me.
Now, you're very active on Facebook, Patrick, and your book is also on sale for those wishing to purchase a copy. It's a great read. What can people do to get a copy of The Moon's Last Gasp?
You can buy it on... you can get it on Amazon. In the US, I'm sure you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on... anything online will normally get it for you. I mean, they've got it in bookstores over here. But, excuse me... I think you can just go online and buy it. Amazon.com, is it? Something like that.
Now, there's a very interesting illustration on the front of the book which shows a half a full moon and a piranha just about to take a chunk out of it. How did that come about?
No, it's not a piranha. It's one of them. You know, when they did those deep sea trawling things, and they took that submarine as far below the sea as they could, and they found all these creatures that were illuminated, and they looked like little spaceships down there. Some of them were lit up, and one of them's a fish from right down there, and that's the fish coming up. I mean, I designed the book cover myself, and it's from the bottom to it's how far we go below the Earth in the sea to how far we've really got, which is the moon. So it's a paradox, really. It's not meant to be weird.
And what's next for you now, Patrick? I believe you're on to your next book.
Well, yeah, I am, but sometimes it'll be fictional. I won't write anything more about my life. I'm open to, just put a book. I mean, I've got a little boy now, and that's my main, my son Finn, and I hope to just, dedicate myself to him, and hopefully that I can educate him and make him a decent human being, things like that. That's my first and foremost. I mean, I don't think I'm going to make money out of this book, and it was never the intention to do so. Altruistically, I don't know if it is. I mean, I don't know. I'll definitely not make money out of it. But that wasn't the intention. I never meant to write I'm not a writer, really. I never meant to become a writer or anything like that. It just happened. And so what happens to it now, the book, I mean, I'm so pleased to have this opportunity that it's gone to America, because that I'm actually speaking on an American station, because I think you're more open-minded about things over there. They're very conservative over here, and, still severe mental health is more of a taboo than even sexual abuse over here. They'll talk about sexual abuse, but I think they really struggle with severe mental health. And so I think if it does get to America, and obviously that I have got, Irish roots and Irish connections, I think it's a more open-minded country, and I think if somebody can make any sense of the way that my life has panned out and into what I've tried to do, I mean, I'm not trying to get sane. I am what I am, but I am constantly, every day, in a battle trying to make sense of what drives me into insanity and back again. And why I'm not constantly insane, oblivious to everything. Why I have to go over and get flashbacks into what's gone off, and how it kind of it's like a bacteria that's constantly developing itself in your head. And it is tough sometimes, but I mean, I've got a little boy now, and hopefully my future's based with him, and I can do the best for him. And if somebody with a better mind than mine can make sense of the historical account of my life, how I've dealt with my alcoholism, and how the circumstances. I mean, I try to explain what drove me mad, and how it drove me mad, and how it still does. And if that can help anybody, then fair play to it. I mean, I'll be really pleased with that, and I'll be happy. I'll be a happy man.
Well, Pat, we wish you the very best of luck with The Moon's Last Gasp, and thank you for joining us here on Radio Irish.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks ever so much, Sean. God bless you, and good luck, America.
Live from New York City, RadioIrish.com.
Radio Irish.